My name is David Buer. I'm a product manager here at Leviton Manufacturing. Today I'm going to walk you through a demo of the touchscreen, the different user interface components, how they work, how they operate, and how those features can be used to create user interfaces appropriate for your application. Now, because it's a touch interface, the user interface isn't fixed at all. In fact, it can have different combinations of all of those components to create a specific user interface to the needs of your customer. You can have the button labeling the way they want it, the sliders in the fashion that they want them. You can have different graphics, different backgrounds, different styles. So all of that can be created to create user interfaces specific for your job and your applications, the way your users will or can relate to the product the best. So with that, let's get started.
On this particular interface, I'm showing you a system where we have 3 tabs. The first tab, Gym. Second, Conference Room. The third tab, Administration. Now the Gym tab is representative of what you might see within a gym of a sports facility where you've got a couple of courts and some ancillary areas. The Conference Room is showing you what you might see in a conference room in a sports facility or really any facility. And the third tab is Administration, shows you what you might see in a reception type area of a sports facility. So taking a look here at the first tab, Gym, you can see that I've got some buttons on the left labeled Bleachers, Hallway, Bathrooms, and Porch, then a group of buttons for Court 1 and a group of buttons for Court 2. Now on this page I'm really showing you 2 different types of buttons, those that we call preset buttons, and the second type of button is a toggle button. So let's look at the toggle buttons first. Over here on the left side we have buttons to turn on and off the bleachers light. You click it once, it turns them on. You click it a second time, it turns them off. The same for Hallway, Bathrooms, and Porch. So what I've done here is I've turned Hallway, Bathrooms, and Porch on. Now, what's going on in the background is the first press really takes the button to what we call the active state, and it executes the active scene. The second press takes it to the inactive state or the inactive scene. Quite often, the first press is on, the second press is off. It doesn't really have to be that way though. The first press could be taking them up to 100%. The second one could be turn most of the lights off but leave one zone to 5%. Or it could toggle between 2 completely different looks, pretty much whatever you want. In the Sapphire system, everything is a scene or an action, and it basically sets your lights or your system to a particular look, and then again the second press goes to something else. Now one of the things that's really unique about our system is it monitors what's going on the network all of the time. If somebody turns on the bleachers lights, it doesn't matter whether they are turned on from a touch screen, a GreenMax digital switch, or a scheduled event. If the bleachers lights go on and they're consistent with how they're programmed in this button, then the button will go to the active state. Conversely, if the lights go to however the button is programmed in the inactive state, the button goes inactive. To that extent, it's really tracking what's going on the network all of the time. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the bleachers, hallway, and bathroom lights. I'm going to leave the porch light off because it's bright outside and I don't want it on. Now we're going to look at Court 1 and Court 2. In both of these areas, we have 3 buttons. Court 1, basketball, curling, and off. In Court 2, we have basketball, volleyball, and off. Now the reason why we have these 3 different scenes for these courts is that they're really multi-purpose areas. Okay, and in these areas you might be playing a basketball game or you might be using in Court 1 curling. The lighting required for both of those events is completely different. In basketball you don't want glare around the baskets, but you need lots of top light. In curling you want a lot of focus on the end goal and not necessarily a lot of other light. So one's highly focused, one's not. I've also got these set up in what we call a preset group. In a preset group, only one button or one preset can be active at a time. Much like your radio stations in your car, you can only have one radio station active at a time, and we call those radio station presets. It's the same analogy here. So I can come into Court 1, I can put it in the basketball scene, basketball lights up. I can then go execute curling, and you'll notice basketball shuts off and curling turns on. Of course, if I go to off turns on, and curling and basketball are both off. So I can go to one of those 3 looks. Conversely, looking in basketball, volleyball are off in Court 2, let's put Court 2 in volleyball look. So we've got one in basketball, one in volleyball. You'll notice I have 2 independent preset groups here. I've got the preset groups for Court 1, the preset groups for Court 2. They both run independently of each other. Now, to help organize organize things in the UI, I've put both of these preset groups in frames. Again, one for the first quart, one for the second quart, because that's what really makes sense here. So that's the Gym tab. Now, jumping over to the Conference Room tab or the Conference Room page, I now see a completely different look. Here, I've got a group of presets on the left, I've got shades on the right, and a line of sliders in the middle. The sliders give us individual zone control. So we could come in here and raise perhaps slider 1 up to maybe 100%. Slider 2 maybe we'll run up 76%. Slider 3 will take up to 51%. The buffet will run up to 82%. And the front lights, we're going to go ahead and run all the way up to 100%. So what that allows us to do is it allows us to custom set the levels of each zone in this conference room to whatever it is that we need. Likewise, I could come set a scene for meeting, presentation, lunch, or off. Now, if I was actually connected to real life conference room here instead of just a simulation, the sliders would actually be moving to the actual levels in the room. Because I'm kind of in an offline state here, they're just kind of staying where they're at. So on the left side, we have presets. Now, this is just like Quart presets we saw on the Gym tab, where I could be in the meeting look, presentation look, the lunch look, or off, but only one at a time. Now over here in the shades group, I've got something a little bit interesting. I can put the shades open like they are now, I can set them in a midpoint position, or I can close them. However, independent of that, I can also toggle whether or not the blackout shades are open. So I could have the shades fully open, but have the blackout shade extended. And what you're really seeing here is you're seeing a group of 3 buttons in a preset group, and then just the blackout button that's a toggle button, and I've got them all organized within a frame. So just reiterating one of the things I said earlier, that those frames are really used for for organization on the UI, and you can use them any way that you want. You're not strictly limited to a particular use in the space. The last tab I'm going to show you here is the Administration tab. And the Administration tab, I'm really giving you a completely simplified look to everything else. There's a button to turn on and off Quart 1, a button to turn on and off Quart 2, and of course a way to turn on and off all of the other extra lights in the gym. I also have a button to turn on and off the entire facility lights, and another button to turn on and off outdoor lights. So they're not nearly as granular in control here as they are in the Gym tab, but that's just giving me some really top level features. I'm going to take you into the system settings screens on the touchscreen. To get into the system settings screens, you come down here to where the clock is, and you simply push and hold. After holding for a few seconds, it'll take you into the settings page. Now on this page, it's not where we necessarily configure the touchscreen itself. That's all done on a separate PC application and is the subject for another video. But what you do here is set up some basic operating parameters for the screen, as well as it gives you a way to import, export configuration and that kind of thing. So let's look at a couple things here. First, the area is secured. Right now I'm signed in, so you can see all of the buttons are enabled. If I go ahead and sign out, you'll notice that all of the buttons, with the exception of software version, are disabled. Now, I can still come in here even without having those administrative credentials and look at my software rev. Here, I see my version is 1.30. Now that part number field is really for use by Leviton in determining some details about the hardware platform that you're running on. This part number here tells me that you're running on a 7-inch touchscreen, but we're running software release 1.30, and that's usually what you're going to need to communicate with our support teams when you need to do that. Now, of course, without credentials, that's all I can do is software version and exit. Now if I hit the sign in button and I enter the required credentials, the default username is administrator. The default password is 1234. Now this information is available on the instruction sheet as well. I hit the OK button, you see all of our advanced functions are now enabled. So walking through the administration settings here, we have a number of things that we can do to configure this touchscreen. The one here up at the top, we have set time. Now what it allows us to do is basically set the date and time. You can see here we're currently set to December 2nd of 2013, and it is 16:09. Now of course that's always in 24-hour format there. I can see it's really more like 16:08, so I'm going to back that up a minute. You also can select the time zone right here. Now this is helpful when we talk about the log file settings to set this and make sure it's current, because it makes sure that our log files are always stamped with the correct date and time. So we'll hit the save button here and it'll take us back to the administration screen. Over here on network configuration is where we set up our network parameters, namely our LumaCAN network ID. Mine's set to 2, and that's where I want to leave it. Edit mode, we're going to come back to in a minute. Project settings let us set a project name and contact information. Software version we looked at earlier. Import and export configuration allows us to import data from a US memory stick or a configuration file from it. Export allows us to take the current configuration of this screen and save it to a USB memory stick. Export logs takes the log file data, both the event and the error and networking logs that are stored on this screen. It exports them to USB stick, and we can use that by our tech support team to diagnose any problems you may be having in the field. Sign out exits the administration or the logged in user here. It returns back to the normal UI. So those are kind of the top level functions of the screen. We're going to talk about edit mode here in a minute, but everything else that you configure at the touchscreen you do through the PC configuration tool, and we have a video available that walks you through that and how it works and how to configure a touchscreen as well. So with that, I want to talk to you for a minute about edit mode, because edit mode is actually really exciting. What edit mode allows you to do is it allows you to change the levels of a scene that are stored in a preset or toggle button or slider without having to go to the PC tool. So if you've got the appropriate administrative credentials to get into the touchscreen, you can go in, enter edit mode, and make some changes. Let's look at how it works. So first, you come into the admin screen and sign in. I've done that already. Second, you click edit mode to enable the edit functionality. It's now going to take us back to the main screen here. Now you can see I've got two styles of buttons. I've got some that are orange and some that are black. The ones that are orange are editable, okay, or recordable. That means I can change the functionality of those buttons. The ones that are not, I can't change at all. So I can come in, click on bleachers to edit it, but basketball, curling, and off for court 1, basketball, volleyball, and off for court 2, I cannot change. So you have a lot of functionality that we can set up at the base configuration level. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here to bleachers, and I'm going to click on bleachers, and it's going to pop up the edit screen. Now what this is telling me here is it's telling me that in the bleachers button, I've got a top, north, south, basket, and high bleachers area, and I can come in and set the levels to whatever I want them to be for this button. And if we were in a live room, you would notice that the levels of the zones that we're controlling here are actually changing. Once I've got them set the way that I want them, I'll hit the save button, and it now saves those values, stores them in that button, and when I activate that button, it's going to recall my now saved look. While I'm in edit mode, not only will the edit screen reflect changes that I make on this touchscreen itself, but it also will reflect changes made by any other source. So you could use switches to turn things on and off. If you happen to be in a theater or an arcatainment style area where you've got maybe a theatrical console or a show controller, you can use it to set up load. You can use web interfaces to set up loads. You can use pretty much anything you want to set the loads. It'll be reflected on that edit screen. You hit the save button, the levels are changed, it returns you back to here, and you're now good to go.